Well, hi everyone. Here is today's story. These are true tales of my African adventures. May this inspire you, deter you, caution you, and above all, entertain you. If one owns a snake and reptile park, you can expect things to happen over a number of years. Some you choose to remember, others you choose to forget. We were a veritable incident factory. Our lovely young cashier Joyce would walk a considerable distance across the coastal part of the Cape Flats, through some remote bushy areas, to Strandfontein, to work each day at the snake park. She was a cheerful lass, always on time, bright, and kept fit by, amongst other things, surfing. One morning she arrived, visibly shaken and upset. She had been attacked and raped. She had also been wearing her mother's engagement ring for the day, and this had been taken from her. She broke down, understandably. We were incensed. We saw to her immediate needs, and in a short while we and a number of policemen were combing the brush. Being the rape capital of the world, South Africa that is, this was not an unusual event for the police. We couldn't find the culprit that day, and it became a cold case. Joyce recovered over time. I guess it was 2 years later. I was going about my business near the cashier's cubicle when a shaken, pale-looking Joyce tugged at my clothing. "He just bought a ticket. He is inside with 3 friends." I established it was in fact the rapist with his girlfriend and another couple. He did not even recognize his victim. We called the police immediately and waited. I was not going to let him escape. Not this time. I armed myself with a Taurus 38 Special with a 6-inch barrel, which I tucked into my deep overall pocket. This gun had served me well on another occasion. I took up a position near the exit, as if just observing the many patrons entering and leaving. Criminals on the Cape Flats are a tough, cruel, hardened lot, prone to violence. I was well aware of this. An elite task force of policemen, whose speciality it was to apprehend gangsters on the Cape Flats, regularly checked on us, and we had become quite good friends. They had rescued us recently from a violent robbery shortly before it got underway. Their timing was superb. Shortly before closing at dusk, a heavily armed gang had positioned themselves outside the snake park. The area was now deserted, and sent in one of their members to recce us. I remember it seemed strange that this man wanted to enter the snake park so late, and was asking questions about the number of people who had visited the park during the day. He also asked how many of us ran the park and were in attendance. His aim obviously was to find out how much cash would be on the property. If he multiplied the entrance fee by the number of people who had entered that day, and there were a substantial number of people, he wanted to know how many of us were there so they knew what they were in for when they effected their robbery. Before we had finished our conversation, a vehicle screeched to a halt outside the entrance gates. There was a hellish fracas, and the man who was recceing us ran out the front gates and was tackled by one of the plain-clothed task force. Several of them had been arrested, guns and all, without a shot being fired. I saw why no shots had been fired. The head of the task force had a semi-automatic 9mm military weapon trained on them, and they knew the game was up. I cannot tell you how grateful we were having this task team looking after us. If they hadn't turned up quite out of the blue that evening, God knows what would have happened. What an uncanny coincidence. I had my hand on my gun under the counter on a shelf which was usually the case at closing time and when suspicious events took place, and shots would have been fired that day. They told us that they had known of the gang's activity in the area and that the gang were in our vicinity that day. The task force had been patrolling local businesses hoping to capture them. Well, time was passing quickly and the police hadn't shown up for our rapist. He must exit soon, I thought. Joyce agreed to nod at him as he passed me. She was very brave, concealing her emotions. She nodded. A man, stocky, just shorter than me, hard-looking, with strong arms, walked past me. I followed him for 3 or 4 paces, then jerked him back, my left arm around his neck, choking him. At the same time, I thrust the 6-inch barrel of my .38 into his lower back. "If you try anything, I will kill you," I said. This was not an idle threat. He knew the barrel in his back was not my finger, and he followed my every instruction. His companions bolted, obviously people of a similar ilk. I took him to a structure we were still building behind the cashier's cubicle. There was no roof, but the walls were up to 2.8 meters. Once in the building, I told him I would slowly release my grip and he should walk to the corner he was facing, sit on his backside, legs in front of him, with arms behind his back. These instructions were issued in Afrikaans. I kept the gun trained on him at all times. Alas, it was time for me to give a demonstration to a large waiting crowd, so I called my partner to hold the firearm and guard the rapist. He was to guard him until I had completed my demonstration or until the police arrived. I returned after the demonstration. The rapist was gone. My partner handed the gun back to me. He admitted that he had felt awkward aiming a gun at an apparently defenseless man and lowered it, assuming our prisoner would remain seated and obedient. As he did this, the animal in the rapist catapulted himself upwards and, gripping the top of the 2.8 meter wall, vaulted over like an antelope and disappeared, never to be recaptured. What can I say? The police were late, and my partner? What can you say about that? The slow but sure and precise wheels of universal justice will no doubt reward him with the fruits of his actions at the allotted time.